My son called and said, "Dad, it's best if you don't come to the cottage this New Year's Eve. You've been difficult." I stood in my kitchen under a tired yellow bulb, one hand on the counter, the other holding the phone. Outside the window, wet snow slid down the glass in slow, dirty streaks, turning my street into a gray watercolor. The pot of chili on the stove kept bubbling like nothing had changed. Ryan kept talking about peace, about space, about how everyone would have a better time without me. I didn't argue. I just listened until my throat went tight. Then I said, "I hear you," and the call ended. So I spent New Year's Eve alone in my house, watching other people count down to midnight. But at exactly 12:17 a.m., my phone lit up. Ryan again. Panicked. "Dad, your name is on the news app. What the hell did you do?" If you've ever been treated like an inconvenience by your own family, you're not alone. Let me tell you what they never bothered to ask about. The chili had been reheated twice already, but I kept it on low anyway, like the heat could fill the empty rooms. Columbus in late December is a particular kind of gray, slush on the sidewalks, salt on the curb, bare trees scratching at a sky that never quite decides to snow or rain. The kitchen clock clicked louder than it should have, each tick landing in the quiet like a finger tap on a table. I rinsed a spoon and set it in the drying rack. Above the sink, Elaine's favorite mug sat upside down in the cabinet. White ceramic, a faded blue hospital logo, a hairline crack near the handle. I hadn't used it since the funeral. The truth was simple. I didn't want to touch something that still felt warm with her. My phone lit up on the counter. Ryan. He didn't call to chat. He called with updates, logistics, reminders, things that could be handled in 5 minutes. 3 years without Elaine had trained my kids to treat me like a checklist. When he did call, he always started the same way, careful and light, like he was stepping onto thin ice. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Ryan, how you doing?" His voice had that practiced softness, the tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news but want credit for being gentle. "I'm fine," I said. "What's going on?" A pause. I heard background noise, maybe traffic, maybe Kelsey moving around the house, a door closing. Then he cleared his throat. "Listen, I wanted to talk about New Year's." The spoon in my hand stopped mid-wipe. "The cottage," I said. "Yeah." Another pause, longer. "So, Kelsey and I have been talking." There it was. Not "I have been thinking." Not "I miss you." A committee decision. "We think it might be best if you sit this one out this year," he said, like he was suggesting I skip a movie. I stared at the chili. Tiny bubbles rose and popped, steady and indifferent. "Sit it out," I repeated. "Dad." He sighed, and the softness sharpened. "You've been difficult lately." The word landed clean like a stamp on paper. Difficult, not grieving, not lonely, just difficult. He started listing my sins like receipts. "At Thanksgiving, you wouldn't let the podcast idea go. You kept pushing it. And at Jason's birthday, you made that comment about his tattoos. You always have to have an opinion. It's exhausting." I swallowed. I could have said 100 things. I could have told him he asked my thoughts, and I answered honestly. I could have told him honesty used to be a family value back when Elaine was alive to translate my bluntness into kindness. Instead, I gave him one sentence. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone," I said. "I was trying to be real." That's exactly the problem. His voice tightened. "You can't just be supportive. Everything has to be your way, your judgment. We're all walking on eggshells around you." I looked across the kitchen to the mantel in the living room. The photo of Elaine at Torch Lake caught the glow from the hallway lamp. Elaine in a thick knit scarf, cheeks pink from the cold, smiling like the world was simple. That cottage in northern Michigan had been her tradition. She'd started it when Ryan was 8, back when our problems were homework and wet mittens. Elaine would have found the middle, but Elaine wasn't here. "So that's it," I said quietly. "I'm not invited." "It's not forever," he rushed. "Just this year. Give everyone some space. Maybe you could go to Uncle Mark's in Cincinnati." Mark, my brother who sent Christmas cards and nothing else. An easy substitute, a place to park me. I let the silence stretch, because silence doesn't beg. Silence makes people hear themselves. "Dad," Ryan said, smaller now, "are you mad?" "No," I said, and I meant it. Anger is loud. This was something colder. "I heard you." I ended the call before he could soften it again, before he could pretend this was love dressed up as boundary. The screen went dark. The kitchen stayed bright. The clock kept ticking. The chili kept simmering. and I realized my hands were shaking. Not with rage, but with that old, familiar grief that shows up when you think you've already paid all your dues. I turned the burner off. I didn't eat. Elaine used to set out plates and champagne flutes for the drive north, laughing at how the cottage smelled like pine and wood smoke. Now the decorations in my living room felt like props on a stage. I walked through the house, past the living room with its quiet decorations, past the guest room that used to be Ryan's, down the hallway to the basement door. My palm rested on the knob. The metal was cold. Down there was the only place that still felt like mine. I turned the knob and the basement door sighed open, exhaling that familiar mix of concrete dust and machine oil. The steps down were bare wood, scuffed in the center from decades of my boots. Halfway down, the house sounds faded. No clock. No reminders that I was alone upstairs. At the bottom, the lights snapped on. My workspace ran along the far wall. A salvaged desk, 3 monitors, and a row of binders stacked like bricks. Each spine was labeled in black marker: utilities, incidents, specs, my kind of decorating. Loose sticky notes clung to the monitor edges. Dates, pipe IDs, reminders. A badge clip from my old office lay beside the keyboard. The place looked messy, but it was mapped in my head. Upstairs, everything still belonged to Elaine. Pillows she picked, photos she arranged, the calendar with her handwriting frozen in July. I'd kept it that way because changing it felt like admitting she wasn't coming back. Down here, I didn't have to pretend. Down here, problems had causes. Causes had fixes. I sat and woke the center monitor. A dashboard filled the screen. Simple, clean, built for speed. Boxes and maps. A timeline. A column of alerts, all green right now because the demo data behaved. I didn't start learning to code because I was bored. I started because I'd seen what happened when systems didn't talk. For 35 years, I worked municipal water. Not the glamorous parts. No speeches. Just pipes older than the men approving budgets. Just crews digging in January. Just emails that arrived too late because someone used the wrong format, the wrong software, the wrong "we'll get to it Monday." I'd watched small warning signs get filed instead of shared. A chlorine residual drifting low. A pressure drop that looked harmless until it wasn't. A lab result that sat in an inbox while kids drank from school fountains. Most crises aren't explosions. They're missed handoffs. Elaine understood that kind of failure. She worked the ER for 28 years. She used to stand in this basement doorway while I tinkered, arms crossed, watching me chase some technical rabbit. "Dan," she'd say when I got too proud of a clever solution, "if you build something, build it for the people who can't afford mistakes." I heard her now as clearly as if she was behind me. Bridge Layer, my little joke of a name, sat open on the left monitor. It wasn't magic. It was translation. A bridge between utility software that hated each other, between departments that ran on different vendors and different habits. Bridge Layer didn't replace their systems. It listened. It pulled readings, maintenance notes, lab reports, and pressure logs into one place, then flagged patterns the human eye gets tired of catching. On the right monitor, a map of a fictional city glowed in muted colors. A single neighborhood block pulsed red, not because anything had failed, but because 3 small things lined up: pressure anomalies, a material tag on a pipe segment, and a lab sample trend that hadn't crossed the official threshold yet. The kind of thing you'd want to know before the headline, before kids got hurt. 9 months of nights built that pulse. 9 months of learning Python, one tutorial at a time. One ugly error message at a time. Coffee gone cold beside the keyboard. Code doesn't care how old your hands are. It only cares whether you tell the truth in syntax. Ryan had laughed when he found me watching a course last spring. "Dad's in his coding phase," he'd said at Easter, like I'd started collecting model trains. Kelsey smiled the way people smile at toddlers holding a spoon. They never came downstairs again. I stared at the dashboard until the sting behind my eyes settled into something steadier. Being uninvited hurt, but it also clarified. If they could erase me that easily from Elaine's tradition, then I needed a world that didn't depend on their approval. I opened my email and typed a name I hadn't said out loud in a while. Thomas Avery. He'd been my counterpart on a regional water project years ago. Sharp, blunt, still in the game. I kept the message short. "Tom, need a second set of eyes on something. Built a platform. Could matter. Can you meet?" I hit send. 6 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the desk. "Dan, Can you meet tomorrow? Bring the laptop. By morning, the hurt from Ryan's call had cooled into something usable. I showered, shaved, and put on the one decent coat Elaine used to tease me about, the heavy wool one that made me look like I was trying too hard. Maybe I was. But I wasn't walking into this meeting as the difficult widower they'd benched from the cottage. I was walking in as the man who'd built something in the dark, while everyone upstairs stopped asking questions. Thomas Avery texted me an address in the short north, a narrow coffee shop wedged between a boutique and a tattoo studio, all exposed brick and plants that somehow survived Ohio winters. The place smelled like espresso and cinnamon, and the windows were fogged from bodies and heat. Tom was already there in a corner booth, late 60s, broad shoulders, silver hair cut short, the kind of face that looked like it had argued with city councils and won. He stood when he saw me, shook my hand once, firm. "Dan Mercer," he said. "Still making trouble." "Apparently," I said. He nodded toward the seat. "Let's see what you've got." I slid my laptop out like it was evidence. The screen glowed, and for a second, I hesitated. Showing your work is a kind of vulnerability, no matter how old you are. Then I opened Bridge Layer. Tom didn't talk. He leaned forward, forearms on the table. His coffee sat untouched, steam rising. Forgotten. I walked him through it the way Elaine taught me to talk to doctors. Simple, clear, no ego. "No, utilities don't need another dashboard," I said. "They need a translator, something that listens to what they already have, then warns them before the trouble becomes a headline." I clicked through the map view, the alert timeline, the incident replay tool that let you scrub back through events and see which signals came first, a simulated pressure anomaly, a lab sample trend, a maintenance ticket buried in a work order system no one checked after 5 p.m. Tom's eyes tracked everything, sharp and quiet. After 5 minutes, I stopped talking. Silence stretched. People laughed at the counter. A grinder roared. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop. Tom finally sat back. "Dan," he said slowly, like he was choosing words that wouldn't break something, "this isn't a retirement hobby." I kept my face still. "No." He shook his head once. "This is an industry fix. This is what every mid-sized utility wishes they had after the fact." I exhaled, but I didn't let myself feel relief yet. I'd seen good ideas die in committees. I'd watched yes turn into maybe, turn into budget cycle, turn into nothing. Tom reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. He slid it across the table, then tapped the name printed in bold. "Great Lakes Civic Tech Partners. They fund infrastructure technology," he said. "Not apps, not nonsense. The stuff that keeps cities running when nobody's watching." I looked at the card like it might be fake. Tom watched me. "You built this alone?" "Alone," I said. "With YouTube and stubbornness." He gave a humorless half smile. "That tracks. Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because I've buried enough people under if only," he said, "and because Elaine would have wanted it used." His voice softened on her name. Tom had met her once at a retirement party. She'd charmed him in 10 minutes, the way she did. "Here's the deal," he continued. "I can get you a meeting. But when they ask questions, you answer like you've been doing this your whole life." "I have," I said. Tom nodded. "Good, then don't undersell it like an old man asking permission." 2 days later, I was in a glass conference room on High Street, facing 3 people who looked like they could buy and sell my entire neighborhood without blinking. Omar Singh sat in the middle, calm and unreadable. Beside him, a woman with a tight ponytail and quick eyes introduced herself as Tessa Caldwell, engineering. The third, legal, didn't smile at all. Tom sat at my side, silent but steady. "Mr. Mercer," Omar began. "Mr. Avery says you have something worth our time." I opened Bridge Layer and didn't waste their time. I showed them the same pulse on the map. I showed them how the system pulled data without demanding a full rip and replace. I showed them the alert logic, not the math, why it mattered, what it prevented. Tessa interrupted twice, sharp. "What happens when the inputs are messy? Where does it break? How do you validate without real utility data?" I answered without flinching. 37 years taught me how to explain, not just build. City people don't trust what they can't understand. Neither do engineers. Omar listened, fingers steepled. At the end, he closed my laptop gently, like he was closing a book he intended to buy. "This is substantial," he said. It wasn't a number, not yet, but it was the first time someone with real money and real responsibility had said the word like it meant something. On the drive home, I stared at my phone at a red light. Ryan's name, Mara's name. I could have called. I could have told them their difficult father had just sat across from investors who took notes while he spoke. I didn't. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. They'd made their choice when they stopped coming downstairs, when they decided my opinions were a problem instead of a person. Silence wasn't punishment. It was a boundary. That night, an email landed in my inbox. Subject: Final Terms Review, Deck 18. The Final Terms Review email sat in my inbox like a weight. Not because I was afraid of the deal, I was afraid of the fine print. I'd spent too many years watching good projects get gutted by one-sentence amendments in a contract. One loophole that turned public safety into a quarterly target. So I called Janine Ross. Elaine's cousin had used her when her father died and the family started circling the estate like vultures. Janine was mid-50s, sharp as a tack, hair always pulled back, glasses on a chain like she was ready to read a lie the moment it was printed. Her office was in a brick building downtown, 2 blocks from the courthouse. The waiting room smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. A small sign by the door read, "Bring documents. Leave drama." Janine greeted me with a handshake and no sympathy voice. I appreciated that. "Daniel Mercer," she said. "Tom Avery told me you built something expensive." "Potentially," I said. She didn't smile. "Potential doesn't pay. Contracts do. Sit." We spread the term sheet and draft agreement across her conference table. Pages and tabs. Definitions. Exhibits. An entire universe made of language. Janine read in silence for a full 5 minutes, moving only her pen. I watched her like you watch a surgeon. Finally, she looked up. "You understand this isn't about whether they like you," she said. "This is about whether they can control you." "I understand," I said. She tapped the paper. "Good, because you don't sign feelings. You sign language." We went clause by clause. Ownership, licensing, data rights, liability, performance incentives, non-disparagement. A paragraph about public benefit initiatives that was written like a nice gesture, soft, vague, optional. Janine circled it and slid the page toward me. "This is where they'll smile at city councils," she said, "and then charge whoever can't fight back." I felt my jaw tighten. "That's not happening." "Then we make it not happen," she said. "You want ethics? We put it in enforceable terms." I leaned forward. "I want free access, or at least discounted licensing for communities that can't afford commercial rates. Rural towns, underfunded districts, places one crisis away from headlines." Janine's eyes didn't soften, but they sharpened with respect. "Define underfunded." "We can tie it to objective standards," I said. "Median income thresholds, utility budget caps, state hardship designations, whatever is measurable." She nodded once. "Good. Measurable is enforceable." Janine started writing language on a yellow legal pad, fast and clean. "We'll create a mandatory program, not a donation, not a PR option, a requirement. And if they fail to provide access as defined, it triggers penalties. Financial, automatic." I pictured Elaine at the ER, sleeves rolled up, telling a young resident, "Don't guess. Check. Protect the patient." "This isn't about looking good," I said. "It's about kids not drinking poison because a town couldn't pay a license fee." Janine underlined something on her pad. "Then we build it like a seatbelt. Ugly, necessary, non-negotiable." We worked for an hour. Then she paused and looked at me over her glasses. "Do you want Elaine's name on anything?" she asked, careful, like she didn't want to turn grief into marketing. The question hit harder than I expected. Elaine's name had been on Christmas tags, birthday cards, the cottage guest book. Then, suddenly, it wasn't on anything at all. "Not for publicity," I said. My voice stayed steady, but it cost me. "For protection." Janine nodded slowly. "Protection how?" "A foundation," I said, choosing the words like I was laying bricks. "A vehicle that ensures the public access piece survives executives, budgets, whatever leadership changes, something that outlives me and outlives them." Janine's pen moved again. "We can set it up, quietly, properly." She flipped to the communications section of the agreement. "Press embargo," she read, "January 1st, 12:17 a.m. Eastern." I almost laughed. "Specific." "It's deliberate," she said. "Market timing, app push cycle, AP pickup. If the Associated Press runs it, everyone runs it. 12:17. Not midnight, not some rounded, sentimental time. A cold, memorable minute. It sounded like a trapdoor. Janine leaned back. They're positioning this as a new year, new infrastructure story. Fine, I said, as long as the story saves the people who don't get featured. By the end, the pages were marked with Janine's handwriting and my initials. The deal wasn't a handshake anymore. It was architecture. On December 18th, I sat in that same room with Omar and Tessa on a video call, Janine beside me. They agreed to the clause after a brief pause, long enough for me to know it mattered. 8 figures. That was all I let myself think. Money big enough to change my life. But not the point. When Janine slid the final signature page to me, my hand didn't shake. I signed. Afterward, alone in my car, I pulled up my contacts. Ryan, Mara. My thumb hovered, not over call, but over the simple truth. They didn't know me anymore. I locked the phone and turned the screen off. Silence wasn't weakness, it was a boundary. New Year's Eve in Columbus is mostly slush and headlights. By late afternoon, the streetlights turned the wet snow into a dull orange soup along the curb. I kept the porch light on anyway, even though nobody was coming. A college bowl game played on the TV, the volume low, commentators forcing excitement into a half-empty stadium. I sat in my recliner with a blanket over my knees, not because I was cold, but because the weight felt like company. The tree in the corner had lights, but no gifts. Elaine used to wrap presents with surgical precision, corners sharp, bows perfect. I hadn't bothered this year. It felt like decorating a museum. I made an old-fashioned at 9. Whiskey, a little sugar, orange peel. No champagne. Champagne belonged to Elaine. That was her laugh in a glass, her way of turning an ordinary night into a promise. Whiskey was what you drank when you were trying not to remember. At 9:42, my phone buzzed with a text from Linda Patterson, Elaine's old friend from the hospital. Linda had checked on me in the early months, then less and less as time passed, and my grief stopped being new. "Saw this and thought of you," she wrote. A screenshot loaded. Torch Lake Cottage. String lights on the porch. A group selfie. Ryan grinning. Kelsey leaning into him. Jason with a beer in hand. A couple of faces I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Ringing in the new year with the best people." Best people. As if goodness was a guest list. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, then set the phone face down on the side table. The bowl game kept playing. A crowd roared on cue. I didn't move. At 11:30, I opened my laptop and checked the email from Great Lakes Civic Tech one last time. Press embargo confirmed. Distribution queued. 12:17 a.m. Eastern. Newswire, local outlets, trade publications. AP pickup likely. Everything automated. I closed the laptop and didn't look again. At 11:58, the TV switched to Times Square coverage. The hosts smiled too hard, like happiness was a job. Confetti cannons sat ready. A digital clock hovered in the corner of the screen, counting down to a moment that meant nothing and everything. I picked up my glass and turned toward the side table where Elaine's photo sat. It was from the cottage, her scarf crooked, hair windblown, cheeks red from cold. She looked like she was about to say something smart and kind. "Happy New Year, Laney," I said, using the nickname only I used. My voice sounded too loud in the room. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. I didn't make a wish. Wishes felt childish these days. 3, 2, 1. Midnight. Fireworks exploded on the TV. Strangers kissed. The crowd screamed like noise could prove joy. I took a sip of whiskey. The house stayed silent. No laughter from the kitchen. No Elaine squeezing my hand. No Ryan calling to say, "Love you, Dad." I watched the seconds tick past midnight like they were pennies dropping into an empty jar. 12:05, 12:10. I thought of the cottage, of Ryan and Kelsey clinking glasses, relieved I wasn't there to be difficult. I pictured my empty seat by the fireplace, the one Elaine always saved for me. At exactly 12:17 a.m., my phone lit up on the side table. Breaking news. Columbus Dispatch. Retired Ohio engineers water safety platform acquired in major civic tech deal. A second notification hit before the first faded. CNN. Breakthrough water safety technology developed by former municipal engineer acquired for expansion nationwide. Then a third from an industry outlet I hadn't read in years. I didn't touch the phone. I just watched it glow, watched my name appear under headlines like it belonged there. The device began to vibrate again. Calls, texts, emails stacking like falling dominoes. Former colleagues, old supervisors, people I hadn't heard from since Elaine's funeral. Congratulations, Dan. Holy hell. Proud of you. The buzzing grew constant, like a trapped insect. I reached for the remote and turned the TV off. The sudden quiet made the phone sound louder. The room filled with that relentless vibration, that insistent proof that the world could still see me, even if my family chose not to. 3 hours north, in a cottage I could picture down to the creak of the front steps, I imagined the moment the news reached them, a hand holding a phone mid-toast, the music stopping, Ryan's face draining of color as someone read his father's name out loud, Kelsey's smile collapsing as she covered her mouth, eyes turning toward them, not impressed, just curious. The best people, suddenly realizing they'd left someone out. At 12:23 a.m., my phone rang. Ryan. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Dad, he said, breathless, background noise loud, voices, music, chaos. Dad, your name is on the news app. What the hell did you do? I kept my voice calm. Happy New Year. Is it real? His words tripped over each other. They're saying this deal, this platform. It's real, I said. How? He demanded, then softened immediately. I mean, when? Why didn't you? I worked, I said. 2 words. No heat. No victory lap. Just fact. Silence on the line. I could hear him swallowing. Someone in the background asked, Is he picking up? Ryan's voice cracked. Dad, we didn't know. No, I said quietly. You didn't. The line went dead a second later. He didn't even say goodbye. My phone kept buzzing until nearly dawn. At 6:03 a.m., my doorbell rang. I didn't look through the peephole. I already knew who it was. Nobody rings a doorbell at 6 in the morning unless they're desperate or lost. I opened the door and cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust. Ryan stood on my porch like he'd been dropped there, wrinkled button-down, jeans creased wrong, hair mashed flat on one side. His eyes were red and swollen, not from sleep, but from panic. He'd driven through the night, and it showed in the way his shoulders sagged, the way his hands couldn't decide what to do. Dad, he said. His voice cracked on the word. Please, can I come in? I stepped back. No greeting, no lecture, just space. He walked into the kitchen and stopped, looking around like he'd never noticed how quiet this house was. The chili pot still sat on the stove from yesterday. Elaine's mug was still upside down in the cabinet. The clock still ticked like it didn't care about headlines. I poured coffee without asking, set a mug in front of him, sat across the table. I didn't fill the air. I let the silence do what it does, force people to hear themselves. Ryan stared at the coffee like it might explode. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'm so sorry. Last night, Dad, we had no idea. We didn't know you were working on anything. We didn't know you. Stop, I said, not loud, just firm. He blinked, startled. I held his gaze. You're apologizing to the headline. His mouth opened, then closed. I mean, no, he insisted, but the words sounded thin even to him. I'm apologizing for everything. I waited. If it was real, he'd say it without the money. The doorbell rang again at 6:21. Ryan flinched. I opened the door and found Kelsey standing there in a long coat, hair too perfect for Dawn, mascara untouched. She looked like someone who'd rehearsed the right face in the car mirror. Dan, she said softly, I'm sorry for how things went. We never meant to hurt you. It was the correct sentence, the exact sentence, like it came from a handbook. I nodded once and let her in. She sat beside Ryan and folded her hands on the table. Husband and wife, united front, damage control. Ryan took a breath. Dad, the money. I lifted one finger. You still think this is about money? I said. Kelsey's expression tightened for half a second before it smoothed out again. Ryan swallowed hard. It's not just. People are saying 8 figures. They're saying you built something that. I built something because I couldn't sleep, I said. Because I've seen what happens when warning signs get missed. Because your mother believed you don't build for applause. You build for impact. I stood, walked to the counter, and opened my laptop. My hands were steady. The screen lit up, and I turned it toward them. Elaine Mercer, Water Safety Foundation. Elaine's photo filled the header, her ER badge clipped to her scrubs, smiling like she'd just convinced a frightened patient they'd be okay. Ryan leaned forward, confused. Kelsey's eyes narrowed, scanning for the angle. Ryan read the line under the title. His voice dropped to a whisper. Established, December 6th. Weeks ago, I said. He scrolled. The number caught his breath. Endowment, he stammered. Dad, this is most of it. It's enough, I said. Enough to make sure small towns don't have to choose between safe water and paying a software bill. Kelsey looked up, searching my face. Why would you give it away? Because kids shouldn't pay for adults' silence, I said. Because the cost of being ignored is always higher for someone smaller. Ryan's eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't panic. It was shame. I didn't tell you, I continued, because you didn't ask. You laughed about the basement. You decided I was difficult and inconvenient and better handled at a distance. Kelsey opened her mouth. I didn't let her build a story. Here's what I need, I said, and my voice stayed calm. Time, proof, respect, even if I'd built nothing. Neither of them spoke. I reached into a drawer and pulled out a manila folder. I set it on the table between us. The label on the tab was neat, black ink. Relocation options, estate documents. Ryan stared at it like it was a weapon. It's not a threat, I said. It's reality. I'm done begging to belong. The clock ticked, the coffee steamed, and for the first time that morning, my kitchen felt like mine again. 3 months after that morning, my life had a new rhythm. Great Lakes Civic Tech gave me a badge, a small office, and a team of young engineers who treated my experience like a tool, not a punchline. They asked good questions and actually waited for answers. In meetings, nobody talked over me. For the first time in years, I felt useful in the cleanest way, because the work needed me. I kept the foundation work separate. Every Friday at noon, I met in a plain conference room with an impact committee. That's where Mara showed up. She didn't race to my house at dawn. She didn't beg. In February, she sent one email. If you meant what you said, I can help. Attached was a framework that ranked communities by risk, not politics, lead vulnerability, pipe age, clinic capacity, school density, metrics you could defend without raising your voice. After she finished walking me through it, I said, earned. You earned this seat. Ryan tried a different approach too. In late March, he sent a marketing deck with no guilt and no family language, pilot cities, timelines, a rollout that didn't overpromise. He asked for 30 minutes. I gave him 15. He used most of it to listen. You don't get family privilege, I told him. You get what you earn. He nodded. Fair. In May, Bridgelayer flagged its first real-world warning in a town outside Flint. 8,000 people, old lines, a budget held together with tape. One neighborhood pulsed amber, then red. Elevated readings, trending the wrong way. The town manager called after midnight. Our team stayed on until the water department isolated the segment and issued a targeted advisory. 2 days later, crews were replacing pipe before a single child tested high. I drove up the next week. The mayor met me in a small building that smelled like paper and coffee. She shook my hand with both of hers and cried. We watched Flint happen, she said. Thank you for stopping it here. On the drive back, I didn't think about 8 figures. I thought about Elaine's rule, build for the people who can't afford mistakes. By December, Ryan called again. Torch Lake, he said, careful. Small gathering. No big party, no performance. Just us, if you want. I'm not coming to be managed, I said. I'm coming to be respected. At the cottage, it was 10 people, not 30. No stage toasts. No cameras. They asked me questions and let the answers land. Mara showed me the impact report. Ryan asked my opinion and didn't defend himself when I gave it. They didn't try to buy forgiveness with tears. Ryan started calling on Sundays, not to pitch, just to check in. Kelsey stayed quieter, more careful, letting space exist. I kept my boundaries and watched their consistency like a gauge. Slow, steady, finally reading true for weeks. When it felt awkward. At 11:58, I held sparkling water instead of champagne. Elaine still owned that ritual, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't invisible. Here's what I learned. Don't confuse access with love. If they only respect you after the headline, they don't respect you. Win clean, then build what matters. Where are you watching from? Have you ever been called difficult when you were just finally setting boundaries?